In this video, we're going to have a look at how to calculate the gradient of a line from a graph. Gradient refers to the slope of the line. Now, there are two formulas that we use when calculating the gradient. So gradient is equal to rise over run, or gradient is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. The first one, rise over run, we can use if we have a graph. The second one we can use if we have two sets of points. You can also use the second formula from a graph as well by identifying two sets of points along the linear line. And when we refer to gradient, the gradient is either going to be positive or negative. So a line that slopes upwards is going to have a positive gradient, and a line that slopes downwards is going to have a negative gradient. Now, if the gradient is negative, then you'd expect it to be a negative number. If the gradient is going to be positive, you'd expect it to be a positive number. If you calculate the gradient of a line pointing upwards and it turns out to be a negative, it means you probably made a mistake and you need to go back and have a look. Same as if you've calculated the gradient of a line that's pointing downwards and you get a positive answer, go back and recalculate because you've made a mistake. A sloping line that slopes down is negative, a line that slopes upwards is positive. So let's have a look at how we can use these two formulas to calculate the gradient of a line. So in our example, we want to calculate the gradient off of the following graph. The first thing I notice that my line is sloping downwards. So I would expect my gradient to be a negative number. So to calculate the gradient, I'm going to use the formula gradient equals rise over run. To calculate the rise, I want to choose 2 points, starting at the point that is closest to the left-hand side, and working out how many I go up or go down to reach the second point on the right side. So starting here, and to get down to my second point, I have to go down 1. So because I'm going down 1, my rise is going to be -1. And then to work out my run, I start and then work out how many I'm going across horizontally to go from my first to my second. So 1, 2, 3. So to go from my left point to my right point, I have to go across 3. So my gradient is going to be -1/3. Now I can also use the second formula to calculate the gradient. So gradient is going to equal y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now before I can use that formula, I need to identify what my points are that I've selected. So using the points provided to us on the graph, my first point would be -1, -1, -1. My second point would be 2, -2. So rewriting my two sets of coordinates, -1, -1, 2 and -2. I want to label each of those x1, y1, x2, y2, and then substitute the values into the formula. So that's going to equal -2 minus -1 over 2 minus -1. So -2 minus -1 will become -2 plus 1, which is equal to -1 over 2 minus -1 will become 2 plus 1, so 3. So my gradient calculates using the second formula to -1 over 3. So you notice that no matter which method I choose to calculate my gradient, I'm going to get the same answer. So the gradient of my line is -1 over 3.